Hey guys, remember Supergirl Season 3, Episode 7, Wake Up, and I was definitely looking forward to this episode. You guys know I haven't exactly loved this season, but I do think it's been pretty solid for the most part. I didn't really know what this episode was going to be, but I have to say that for me, this was really the episode that I think really did kind of get things moving. It definitely seemed like this was the one that jump-started the season, and I honestly really did love this episode. We finally get an update on what's going on with Mon-El. We finally, get a lot more with Samantha in this episode. Just a really great episode all around. So we start off, we see there's a pair of people in a person submarine-type craft. They're near the National City waterfront. They're investigating the crashed spaceship that we saw earlier in the season. And as they approach it, there's a beam of light that blasts them away. We don't know really what that's all about, but we know it's somehow connected to Mon-El because we know he was in that pod and then he went through that wormhole, and we finally get into what that all means. But like I said, besides Mon-El, this is also a really big episode for Samantha. We get more into her character, her kind of channeling her powers, and she's cooking dinner for Ruby when she gets an idea. She looks down a pot of boiling water, and before too long, she submerges her hand into boiling water and doesn't notice a difference in pain levels because obviously she was shot in the last, not the last episode, but 2 episodes ago. She was shot and she was completely unharmed. So now she's trying to figure out, okay, well, since I was shot, does that mean that I'm completely, immune to any sort of pain? And she notices that, yeah, that's kind of the case. She seems kind of invincible. So she orders Ruby to go have dinner at her friend's, and it's clear that she really is trying to master her abilities, and I really like seeing that. After a few episodes of her being like, oh no, I don't have powers, what you're talking about, I like that she is starting to channel her abilities. I was not looking forward to an entire season of her just deny, so I like that she actually is in the know, and she actually is aware that maybe she does have these powers, and I think that definitely is really interesting. I'm interested in seeing really where this is going to go, and luckily, it does seem like they're building her to be the villain. We get more into that in this episode, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But the other big thing in this episode is that there really isn't a main sort of big bad. There's always like that one ancillary threat every episode. Well, that's not the case here, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoyed this episode so much, because it actually defied a lot of the formulaic storytelling that's we've come to know in Supergirl. We see at the DO, Kara instructs Wynn to research the ship at the waterfront. He says it's been there for 12,000 years, and it's made from metal that's not on the periodic table. So Kara, Wynn, and John go investigate the ship, and John and phase the group inside the ship. They look around inside the ship and are shot at it because when the attacker steps into the light, we see it's actually Mon-El, and Kara is really shocked about this. I mean, this is someone who she didn't think she'd ever see again. I don't think she ever moved on from Mon-El, but I think she was in the process where she was starting to get over and starting to move on with her life, and now here he is again. Mon-El is back, and he and Kara do embrace, and from here, we basically get to see, what's happened to Mon-El since then. So the group takes Mon-El back to the DO to run diagnostic tests and find out that he's able to breathe Earth's air now, which is really weird, because as we know, that was one of the big things in Season 2, is that there was a lot of difference between how Daxamites are and how humans are. But Mon-El in this episode is really different than the Mon-El we've come to know, which I honestly really did like, because yes, I enjoy Mon-El in Season 2, but even I will admit he did get a bit over, just a little bit overused, and I think the writers realized they had struck lightning with Chris Wood, and they tried to milk him as much as they could. So I'm glad to see they kind of did tone him down a bit, and he was a little bit streamlined this episode. You definitely do see that. So basically, he tells her that he's been, basically we see, he reveals that the other people in the chambers on the ship are like him, that are passengers on the ship. So the room clears, Mon-El and Kara have a quick talk. Obviously, they have a lot of catching up to do, and he tells her he's been trying to send a message to her for 7 months now, and, there's been no sign of her. So basically, I thought this was a really good set, but Samantha then drives to a house where a woman named Patricia opens the door, and after talk, we found out Patricia is actually Samantha's adoptive mother, and she kicks Samantha out of the house where she got pregnant with Ruby, and Samantha questions her mother about it, if she exhibited signs of superpowers when she was growing up, because this is seemingly coming out of nowhere. I mean, she doesn't know how this is really happening. Why is she being affected by this? Why was she not aware of this till now? And she asks for some more information about her birth mother, explains explains Patricia how she got shot but wasn't hurt, and Patricia decided to take her to a barn on the residence and shows her the pod she used to travel to Earth in, and Patricia reveals that she didn't adopt Samantha, turns out. She actually found her crash landed in the pod, and while examining the ship, it activates once Samantha touches it, and this was a really well done scene. Again, she's really honing in her abilities, and we can really see how she's starting to master, what she's able to do, and I really enjoyed seeing that. So James arrives to the DEO to talk with Kara about Mon-El's reappearance. She admits to James that Mon-El's been pretty distant since he's returned. She's not entirely sure why. Also, there's no Lena in this episode, which was very strange, but I understand there was so much going on, you really couldn't fit Lena in there. So Samantha's unpacking her bags to go on a trip by herself, and she explains to Ruby she needs to do it by herself, and tells her she'll leave money to take out since the babysitter's cooking is atrocious, and you can tell she's doing some soul searching. Again, she's trying to tap into her powers, and I really love seeing that here. So Alex tells John to go be with his dad and show him the sights around National City, because that's another big part of this episode, is that John's Myron is very much in the world now, and he's not used to Earth. That's the thing. I mean, we get a scene early on in the episode where Wynn talks about how Myron asked to use the bathroom, so needless to say, there are a lot of differences between Mars and Earth. My only complaint with this is that I understand Mon-El's back, but this is very similar to what we got with Mon-El last year, where there's a lot of differences between Daxamites and how humans are, and I don't know, I'm just not the hugest fan of this plot. I understand what they're trying to do. It does give John some substance, I'll definitely say that. It gives him something of value on the show, which I like. I think, the actor who plays him is just so great that you could give him anything and he'd be fantastic. I can't think of his name right now, but he's fantastic on the show, and I can understand why they're giving him this plot, but just right now it just feels very repetitive, and I feel like I've seen it before. But basically, her and Wynn will continue monitoring the sunken ship situation, and after getting coffee, they get into a bit of an argument. Myron walks off, and it's kind of about the same stuff where, he was the absentee father, and that he's not very proud of what John did. Again, I wasn't the hugest fan of this plot line here. I thought that, out of everything going on, this was my least favorite element of everything going on in the episode, but I still understand why it's happening. So back to the DEO, a cautious Mon-El surveys his surroundings before unhooking himself from the equipment to snoop around, and he's able to find some sort of weapons room, so he chokes out a DEO agent before being knocked unconscious himself by Kara, because obviously, he's kind of unhinged, and they need to keep watch of him. So Mon-El awakes, and Kara's placed him in on of the DEO holding cells, and she asks what he was up to, because he's acting a lot more volatile than he was before, but she's unable to get any sort of information out of him. So he's hiding something. She knows very well he's hiding something. We know he's hiding something, and I like that the audience isn't aware either. Like, they could have easily done something where we see Mon-El and, we know what happened to him, and then, where we see Mon-El, and then, we know what happens to him, and then Kara finds out, and I'm glad they didn't take it in that direction. I think it makes a lot more sense for them to do it this way, where we didn't know really what he was up to, and we're getting this information basically at the same time that Kara is, and I really enjoyed seeing that here. I did think that definitely was really well done, and I enjoyed the way that was handled here overall. But basically, Samantha's on the road. She's traveling through a desert, and she takes a dirt road and stops to find her car is overheating. And again, she's not sure why. I mean, obviously it's because of the desert, and her car is being affected, but she's not. So it's Wynn's turn to talk to Mon-El. Wynn approaches him about the alien ship, and Mon-El reassures him that there's a lot of stuff that he just wouldn't understand. And Mon-El asks for Wynn's help to get back to the ship, telling him people, Kara included, will get hurt if he isn't taken back to the ship. So again, there's clearly something he's hiding from her. We don't know what it's really about, but obviously he needs to get back there as soon as possible. So basically, we see after this, he attempts to chip away, and he finally reveals something he needs to do, including Kara, and that's basically what he decides to do here. So Kara walks into the holding chamber to see Mon-El is no longer in his cell, so she doesn't know what's going on, but they're back on the ship using the item that Mon-El recovered in the secure room of the DEO. They turn around to find Kara on their ship, and they get into a bit of a fight when Mon-El reveals he's actually been gone not for 7 years, not for 7 months, but actually 7 years years, it turns out. Yeah, it's been 7 years for Mon-El, because it turns out when he launched into space at the end of last season, he was sucked through a wormhole, and he lived in the 31st century for 7 years before being able to return. And he just kind of forgot about Kara, which, I mean, I understand why Kara's upset, but it kind of makes sense if you think about it. I mean, 7 years, that's a lot of time to decompress. That's a lot of time to just begin a whole new life. So, obviously, he's going to have to move on, just like Kara's got to move on without him. So to me, I didn't really understand why Kara was so upset about this. I mean, I understand that, you know, obviously she missed him, but she was in the period where she was even starting to move on from Mon-El. I mean, sure, she was thinking about him, but she was starting to move on with her life, and they had to go on. So just like Mon-El, he had to kind of go on without her, and I don't know why she's upset with him for this. So the pods in the ship begin falling. One of Mon-El's colleagues begins drowning in the pod, and Kara's able to step in. She breaks the glass, rescues the woman in the pod, and Mon-El calls her Imra. Imra is someone who he clearly does have some sort of Imra, so he clearly has some sort of connection with Imra. We don't know what that is really about, but he clearly does have some sort of connection with her. And like I said, I thought this was a well done reveal, it turns out. And basically, we then see after this that when her car broken down, Samantha's walking home through the desert in hopes of finding help. The ground starts shaking, rocks are starting protruding from the ground, and when complete, the rocks form a fortress. So you don't know what this is all about, but it's probably connected to rain, so you know definitely something's going on there. So Mon-El, Wynn, and Kara then take Imra back to the DEO to monitor her vitals, and John takes Myron to his apartment, and they talk about his time on Earth, and John asks his father to move into the apartment with him, saying that they can make it their new home. And again, it's clear that Myron, he just doesn't really understand Earth right now, and there's a lot of things that he still has left to learn, and you know, he's so distracted by his work, he can't even spend quality time with his father, as we saw. But I did like this. I like that they can both get a taste of freedom away from the DEO, and that they can have this time together. And I enjoyed that. I did enjoy what we got here. I don't know if this really was necessary for this episode, other than the fact that they just need to fill that time up with something. So they did, they gave John something to do, which I just personally kind of found unnecessary. But we then see Mon-El. He's brooding over National City on a balcony. Kara approaches him, and before she's able to say anything, he apologizes, and the two are talking. Mon-El's about to tell Kara something when Imra wakes up, and we don't know, again, what he's hiding from her, but Mon-El runs to her, and they kiss, much to the surprise of Kara. Now, I thought he was going to say fiance, but it turns out Imra is actually his wife, and they have a lot of catching up to do, obviously. So we then get to the ending, and the ending of this episode was fantastic. Odette Annable at the end of this episode was amazing here. I really love what she did. But she enters the fortress. She used the crystal she took from her pod to place into a hole inside the fortress. And as soon as she does, this hologram opens up. And it explains that Samantha is actually Kryptonian. Which, I mean, that's something that we've known. We've known that there was a pod that came out of nowhere. And Samantha was most likely part of that. But basically, turns out she's actually a world killer. And it informs her of her true birthright, and basically she puts together over time to create the ultimate weapon to execute justice, but there are those who will hate her for what she must do. Turns out she's also going to forget about Ruby, which obviously she's really upset about, but Samantha thinks that she will become a hero like Supergirl, and I like this. I like that at first she thinks she's going to be heroic, but it turns out that's not what her powers are for. They are clearly for evil, and she tries to refuse her birthright, but now the choice is out of her hands. She basically has to, become Rain, and Samantha doubles over in pain, and when she gets back to her feet, her eyes glow red. She says, "I have awoken, am Kryptonian," and Rain is officially born, and that is the way this episode ends. So, like I said, guys, a lot of great stuff going on in this episode. I really did love what we got here. But let's first talk about Rain, because I love the way they're setting this up. Like I said, one of my biggest problems in Season 2 is the fact that they didn't have a consistent threat. You just didn't feel that consistency. You felt the urgency towards the end. I would definitely say Rhea was a good villain, and Terry Hatcher did a good job. She was very one-note, but she was definitely a good villain. But you just didn't feel attached to her, and you didn't really care about her, and it didn't feel like payoff because of the fact that, we had spent a whole season with Lily and Luther, and we thought Lily and Luther was going to be the villain, and then she wasn't, and, then of course it turned out that Rhea was the villain. So I like where this is going. I like, at least for right now, that Samantha is the threat. She is the villain of the season. We now know that she is in fact Reign. She is aware of her origin, and it seems like her entire life she's been going under this identity. The difference is, unlike Kara, she can't maintain that presence. She's going to start to forget her memories, and the entire life that she's formed is pretty much shaken up. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this does play out. Now, I do think there's going to be a way for her to keep Ruby in her life, but I think it's going to be really complicated. It's clear that Reign has been around for a very long time now, and they've been waiting for Reign to awake. She is definitely a villain of Supergirl, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the way this plays out, because we haven't really seen something like this before, where someone comes along, they're like Supergirl, but they actually have to use their powers for evil, and that's actually really cool. The idea that she is a Kryptonian, but she's not meant to be a superhero. She's not meant to be Supergirl's sidekick, which I think that's kind of what Samantha thought, that maybe she was supposed to work with Supergirl, and she was supposed to ally with her, and they were going to take on, all these various threats together, but that's definitely not the case. She is very much evil, and I'm definitely interested in seeing where this is going to go. I think this is going to be really interesting overall, and like I said, Odette Annable is doing a really great job here, and it's sad that basically her entire life is about to be stripped away from her, but I'm very intrigued to see where this does go. As far as Mon-El, I knew we were going to see Mon-El eventually. I didn't think it was going to be this early on. I thought it was going to be the mid-season finale, but I'm glad that we saw him in this episode, because it really does get a lot of things moving. And it's clear that there's a lot of stuff that Mon-El's been through that he really hasn't told Kara about. The fact that, we now know that he's actually married. We know that, he was gone for 7 years. So there's clearly been a lot of time away from Kara. And 7 years, I mean, that's a lot of time to process and to decompress and to create a whole new life. So I doubt that Imra is the only thing that has changed in Mon-El's life. I'm sure there are many other things that have changed, and I think all of those things are about to unfold very soon. I'm looking forward to seeing really where that's going to go. And again, it's a really smart idea to bring Mon-El back, but have him be a different kind of character. Season 2, he was very optimistic, he was kind of naive of the world, and he was very much just Kara's love interest. This season, it's a lot more complicated, and I'm definitely all for it. I like that he is a little bit more grounded and stoic, and you definitely do see that from him here. So I'm really looking forward to seeing where they do take Mon-El this season, because it's clear they're taking him in a different direction than in season 2, and like I said, I'm all for it. I really love Chris Wood as an actor. I think he does a great job in everything he's in, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do end up doing there. As far as things go with John, like I said, my only real complaint in this episode, as much as I do like David Harewood in the show, and as much as I do like the scene between him and his father, I didn't really get the point of why we have this going on. To me, like I said, it was only there because they needed to fill up runtime, and it was a good plot. I mean, it was okay, but it's the same stuff we've seen, where it's very similar to how Mon-El, wasn't aware of the world, and now how Myron is aware of the world. The difference is that, John's work life is interfering, but that's similar to Kara's work life interfering. So essentially we do have the same plot here. We've just reversed characters and reversed the type of familiarity. Instead of it being a boyfriend, it's now a father, and instead of it being, Supergirl, it's now someone that works at the DEO. So it just feels very familiar to me. It doesn't feel different enough, and especially compared to what they're doing with Mon-El and what they're doing with Samantha, which is actually really different from what we've seen before. This just felt a little bit lacking to me. But honestly, guys, that's really it. I really did love this episode. I think this is easily, for me, the strongest episode of the entire season. I thought we had a lot of great stuff going on here. We got a lot of useful information, and I am definitely going to give Supergirl Season 3, Episode 7, Wake Up, a B+. So overall, guys, for this episode of Supergirl, the most guys thought this episode overall, left your thoughts in it. And of course, next week we will not be continuing this plotline. It's going to be the beginning of Crisis on Earth X, which I am so excited for. I can't wait to see where that crossover does go. But let me know guys thought this episode, left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.